Hey there, I'm Joanna. In this video, I'm sharing why I quit my 6-figure marketing job in Silicon Valley. I quit my job in February 2021, nearly a year ago to the time of making this video. I was a director of marketing at a Silicon Valley tech startup. Before quitting, I had been doing marketing at the startup for about 4.5 years, and previously I worked for about 10 years in Silicon Valley. As background, earlier in my career, I was a program manager at Google. I then went to business school to get my MBA, and then after that, I worked as a marketer at tech startups. Leaving my job was the best decision for me, and I have no regrets. I want to talk about why I decided to leave though, and the process and thought that went on behind that. I get asked about this a lot. Why I left, how I knew it was time, why I decided to work away from security and a career I had built. And I'm gonna answer all of that for you in this video. I'm gonna share my story from my heart. As I start doing more YouTube videos, I have a lot of life and experience and vulnerability I wanna share with you. I have a lot of life stories and lessons I hope I can inspire and motivate you through. And ultimately, I wanna encourage you to stand tall in who you are. That's my motto. All right, here we go though. Why I left my job. So before I share why I quit my job, I'm gonna share more background about me. My entire life, I've been pretty responsible and hardworking. I grew up in a Chinese American family in the San Francisco Bay Area, and the narrative of go to school, get a good job, go to grad school, and have financial security for the rest of your life was definitely encouraged. And then I would do that. I would work really hard and overcome trials to get a job, get into grad school, and things like that. And it was this conventional path that society said I should walk, but I also always had this very adventurous side to me, and my friends know this. People talk about the return on investment. I'm like, what's the return on adventure? I'm very experience oriented, and I always want to learn from things. I would always do things that were considered societally acceptable, but then I would go and add my own twist to it or walk away from it. For example, I previously worked at Google, and that's a dream company for many people. I got a job there in my mid-20s, and I could have stayed there and been set for life, but part of me felt like I was dying in a big corporation, and I felt like I was a cog in a system. Maybe I'll do a separate video on my Google experience. Let me know in the comments if you'd be interested in hearing about that. So I was able to walk away from Google, a move that many of my peers thought was crazy, because some people like Google, but I knew it wasn't the ultimate fit for me. A second example is business school. After Google, I went to earn my MBA, and when I was in business school, a lot of my peers recruited for big companies, management consulting firms, investment banking firms, etc. In business school, your social currency and worth is tied to the job you get after business school. So a lot of my friends had jobs locked up at McKinsey, Bain, BCG, top financial firms, etc. And you want to get that job 9 months before graduation. Me, I did not recruit on campus, and I just did my own thing. Like I said, oh, I'm gonna get a job at a startup. And I did that for my summer internship. And then after I graduate business school, I'm gonna come back to Silicon Valley and I'll get a job at a startup. I ended up being unemployed for 9 months, but I did learn something there, which I've previously blogged about. If you wanna hear any of my stories of how I've overcome unemployment, feel free to let me know in the comments. But anyway, so in business school, everyone was recruiting at these big companies, and I was like, nah, I'm good. I'm just gonna figure it out later, because I knew I had the big company experience, but it wasn't for me, and I just wanted to find my own path, and I reasoned at a smaller company and startup, I would gain those skills. One of the challenges at bigger companies for me was that I felt like I was very siloed and I wasn't gaining the business skills that I wanted to gain. So not going to a big company after business school was considered crazy by some of my classmates. In a future video, maybe I'll talk about, is business school or getting your MBA worth it? Let me know if you want to hear about that too. I always had this pattern of working really hard to achieve things, and I would achieve them and I'd get there and be like, yeah, it's cool. All right, peace. Let me do my own thing. So there's that narrative and backdrop coming into why I decided to recently quit my job. And that leads me into my next point of I know my why. This is so key to your life. Knowing my why enabled me to have the courage and faith to quit my job to start my own thing. When you know your purpose and your passion and what you're put here on earth to do, that's really a game changer, and it gives you the courage and faith to do things. Very honestly, my Christian faith guides me. I did fall away from Christ in high school and college when you get a little crazy crazy, but I made an intentional decision to follow him. I've journaled, I've reflected, and I was always seeking purpose. That was always really important for me. And in my early 20s, I realized that I'm called to be an encourager. I love encouraging others to stand tall in who they are, to be themselves, and to live into their purpose. I also had experiences where I would interact with people who I knew were gonna be very successful, or they were really successful, but they were so empty on the inside, because we can chase things like a high salary, a nice house, a nice car, a lucrative lifestyle, and get that, and try and keep up with the Joneses and feel really empty. And I realized that was who my heart broke for, and that was who I felt called to reach, because I know if I didn't know Christ, I would be that exact same way. Early on, I realized, okay, I have the gift of encouraging people, and naturally, when people spend time with me or they watch my content, they usually feel very inspired. And I just realized that. I was like, all right, this is what I'm called to do, and I'm called to people who look really successful on the outside, but they're empty on the inside. And I felt God telling me, Joanna, you're called to this group of people, and in order for them to listen to you, you have to go through those experiences. So largely me getting a job at Google, getting my MBA, then working in Silicon Valley, that was so I could have the credentials and credibility when I talked to this group of people. And when I quit my job, I documented it on TikTok, and so many people reached out, like executives at tech firms, business school classmates, and a lot of people, they're living this life that looks so successful, but they're so empty on the inside. And I just felt like I know my why, so I had to go through that to eventually step away from that and stand tall in my story, and that would speak loudly. So my why is to encourage people to stand tall. Also in the backdrop, I never had the dream of being a CMO at a tech startup, or I never envisioned building a unicorn startup. I just want to encourage people to be themselves. Like, that's honestly it. And how I'm doing that now is through creating content and being a marketing coach. I coach others in how to build their online brand through story and content, and just letting their own personality come through when they build an online presence, which is something I've been able to do. No one can recreate my content, and it's very clear that I am who I am, and I want to impart that into other people so they can build a recognizable brand. My motto of standing tall, for me, that looks different from what everyone else was doing. This is all in the backdrop of me about to quit my job. I had this experience of being pretty adventurous. I knew who I was, and then the pandemic hit. So these last 2 years, 2020 to 2022, have been pretty hard for a lot of people. No one's been untouched from COVID. I think COVID and the pandemic has impacted a lot of people's lives in some way or another. So I was working at a startup in Silicon Valley and working from home. And I feel like during the pandemic, all the insecurities we had were magnified, and they were put under the flame. Any relational struggles you were dealing with or tension, they just all combusted. And I definitely faced a lot of challenges. I call it the triple axle of doom. I couldn't swim, which is really important for my mental health routine. If you are a swimmer or a runner or anything like that, and that is taken away from you, you're like, what is happening? All the pools were shut in San Francisco. Aquatic park, not really a fan of swimming in that water. I did swim the aquatic park race, but anyway, along with journaling, swimming is what I do to process things. And as a side note, I'm a huge advocate for mental health and having a toolkit. At that time, a lot of tech workers could work from wherever. I was in San Francisco feeling pretty burnt out, so I decided to move to Hawaii to swim. That was really the objective. And during that time, I also started vlogging on TikTok and building a community there. I talk about that in my last video. Hey everyone, I have packed up my life in San Francisco and I'm leaving for Hawaii tomorrow. I am feeling all the things. I'm excited, I'm nervous, I'm scared, I'm hopeful. It feels weird to just leave behind my life in San Francisco. I have a great community, and it's scary, but I also know this feels right. So we'll see what happens. I welcome you to follow along on my journey. I just kind of needed some space to think about things. I'd always wanted to do my own thing, and I was coaching on the side. I just didn't really have the courage to leave in San Francisco, if that makes sense. I needed to get some space and have some clarity. So I moved in October 2020. I thought a change of environment would help me from being burnt out, and it did. Swimming in the ocean was really good. And then underneath that though, I realized it was time for me to move on from my job. I'm so thankful for my experiences in Silicon Valley at my previous company, for what I learned as a marketer, especially I discovered my love of content at my previous company. When you're in a relationship and you realize it's time to move on, and if you overstay your time there, it's just gonna turn bad. Yeah, I realized that because My goal was always to do my own thing, and I literally had gained all the skills that I needed because I'd worked a long time in Silicon Valley. So it's either now or never. And I think what really did it for me was in Q1 in 2021, we were filling out OKRs, objectives and key results, and I was setting goals for the quarter, and when I was writing them, I realized that I couldn't do it. I couldn't follow through with that, and I don't want to be someone like that. Like, the way my parents raised me is just be someone of your word and work with integrity, and I didn't want to say I could try and do something if I couldn't. That's really it. I was getting a lot of anxiety. I would hear Slack notifications and my heart would race because I knew it was time to move on, and I reasoned, Joanna, you need to leave this company before your mental and physical health deteriorates, and just leave in a good state and do right by the company too, because they deserve to have a marketer who will commit 100% to them. At this point, I really realized I loved content creation. I was building my community on TikTok. I just wanted to encourage people, and I was coaching on the side. And really, me moving to Hawaii gave me the space to do that, because I don't think I would be able to quit in San Francisco and Silicon Valley, because I would hear the noise of everyone else. Like, oh, what unicorn startup are you gonna build? When's your company gonna IPO? Or when are you raising series money? And I'm just like, I just wanna encourage people. I just wanna create content. That's what I wanna do. Like, that's just it. Like, I've always wanted to encourage people to be a coach. So I'm like, this is it. And you know, don't get me wrong, like, I have aspirations for myself also, but being in Hawaii gave me the space to do that, and just swimming in the ocean was good for me. I knew I had to quit. I was really scared to quit though, and I'm gonna bring up two major reasons why. One, I thought I'd be left out in the streets and poor, just quite frankly, because growing up in an Asian American family, I had poverty mentality or immigrant mentality, and I was always saving for a rainy day. And even though my entire life I've been very financially responsible, I've saved, I've always lived below my means, I had this idea that I would just be on the streets begging for food, even though that's not the reality at all. Because of being so resourceful in my previous life, that's why I'm able to take the leap into entrepreneurship now, because I've saved and I have a cushion. So, you know, I was scared I would be out, like, left out in the streets, and the way I dealt with that was I talked to a financial planner, I ran the numbers, and I literally assessed how much do I need for my monthly costs, what are my expenses, how much time do I have, and that really helps now as I'm an entrepreneur, because I wasn't under the gun right away 2 months out to make money, or else I wouldn't be able to afford rent. I know I have a cushion because of previously responsible habits, and that really helps a ton, and it helps that I've worked hard and saved and invested in myself, so I have the skills to make money now. That was it. I just thought I'd be left out in the streets. Yeah, that hasn't happened yet. It's not gonna happen. I'm just being real with you guys. And the second challenge I went through is, what are other people gonna think of me? What's my peers, families, etc. gonna think that I'm leaving this career in Silicon Valley to just do my own thing, be a content creator and coach? What is a content creator even? What's TikTok? Do you even know what you're doing? Things like that. And what I've learned on my journey is that you can't please everyone. People can give you advice, but you are responsible for living your life. As an Asian American, you want to have your parents' approval. You know, thankfully my parents are pretty cool about it. My dad was like, yeah, this doesn't surprise me, Joanna. I see what you've been doing on the side, and you know, during our car rides, you would always mention how you like coaching. So let that be a sign to you also. People know, or your parents know. My friends, I tell them I quit, they're like, yeah, sounds about right. like you see, there's patterns in my life. There's the idea of what are people gonna think of me, but you have to live your life. So those are two major fears I had. In the end, I still decided to do it. And I documented this all on TikTok because I've been vlogging my journey. A lot of people reached out and they can relate. You know, that's why I create content. I create content to inspire other people to live their life. And one way to inspire others is just by me living my life fully. Basically, why I quit my job is because I know my why. And it was time for me to move on. I had gained the skills I wanted. I'm very thankful for my time in Silicon Valley, and it was time for me to walk my own path. That's why I left my job. But whatever your situation is in life, I hope you stand tall in who you are and you own your story. Anyway, so that's my story. Let me know if you have any thoughts or questions, and until my next video, I hope you stand tall in who you are.